We're going to start off with retired colonel from Connecticut State Police, Danny Stebbins. And I don't want to get these details wrong, so forgive me that I'm going to look at my notes. Danny has over 40 years in law enforcement, 35 of which were with the with the Connecticut State Police. He served with the state of Connecticut and the U.S. Attorney's Office. And most notably for the purpose of this panel, unfortunately lived through, supported, responded, and ushered solutions for the Sandy Hook Elementary School mass murder, which recognized or lost 20 children and 6 educators. He was the commander in charge of that event. I can't tell you in the short time that I've known Danny that there was nothing so pressing as listening to his stories and some of the lessons learned that he will share with us. I don't think that we're going to accomplish it in 45 minutes, but I think that it's something that you can continue over within the reception or in future sessions with us. The second speaker is going to be Major Joseph Brennan from New Jersey State Police. I have personally known Joe for over 15 years, probably a little bit more, but in sort of working through not only his career and how we've crossed paths. Joe is currently the executive officer for the Colonel of New Jersey State Police. He was formerly the ROIC commander, the Regional Operational Intelligence Center, which is the New Jersey Fusion Center. He was the captain for what are their 3 regional real-time crime centers. We touched on those concepts this morning as I made reference. In this example or in this formula of how that operates, Jersey not only has a specific region that it supports, but then it is sort of tailored to the needs of that specific region and any of the crime activities that happen. And when I got the opportunity to observe Joe and his appreciation for data, was when he was a sergeant supporting what was a core stat initiative. Not ComStat, but a core stat initiative. And to that end, for those of us from Jersey, there is a northwestern quadrant of the state that unfortunately has the majority of the top 5, I think we used to call them deadly sins. The most activities in this shortest region because of the highest density of population. And the governance model or the communication model that was put in place there and still is very successful today, and I think Joe mentioned that they're having their 10th anniversary, was one that there was a session that still happens on a monthly and quarterly basis to address the actual incidents and assailants and patterns and sharing the data in a very large room, sometimes not unlike this one, where you would have not only the executives from the different agencies within that area, but also their support investigators, et cetera. And it was a group event. I mention that because, ironically, we've had, again, not only with the cross-section of talent and organizations represented, but here is an operational trooper that, of course, has a career that shows great value and accomplishments, but he has always gotten the value of data from day one, and that is huge. Our third and last panelist is Chief Deputy Larry Zweig, when I probably ruined that pronunciation, as all will get to know. Names and me don't get along, but he is from the Orange County Sheriff's Office. He has been a member of that organization since 2012. He currently serves as the Chief Deputy for the Operations Service Bureau. And like every other organization, there's different things that are components of that. That bureau is responsible for the Uniform Crime Division, the Criminal Investigations Division, and the Special Operations Division. He also has experience in high-risk incident commander activities, which then, of course, covers SWAT, emergency response team, and hostage negotiation. Again, when you're doing the cross-section between the guns, the violence, the incidents, the responses, the lessons learned, there is a lot of information, a lot of value, a lot of experience at this dais. So in the order that I introduce you, Danny, I'm going to ask if you would go first and speak a little bit about your past, your experiences, and maybe some of the programs that were put in place, and then I'll ask the same of your panelists. And you are welcome to either use the dais or speak from there.
Okay, I'll try it from right here.
You can do it right from there.
First off is thank you for having me here today. It's an honor to be in front of this group in this format. The lessons that I had to learn, and many of them the hard way, I think are much better for me to share from up here than for you to learn in a real live act. So I'm going to jump right in. We were not prepared for Sandy Hook. I don't know anybody that would have been, but I'm going to throw out a bunch of topics that you can really write down with just a few letters, because you're going to find a few that you don't have, because we had a lot of these. The first one, we don't normally roll up on a scene knowing we're going to have to stand people down, meaning they're going to be so distraught, police and fire, EMS, that they can't work, they can't make clear decisions after a case like Sandy Hook. And we had a lot of that right up front. That puts you in the hole right away. Second, if you haven't ever heard of FLO, Family Liaison Officers, those were huge to the success of what we had at Sandy Hook, considering there are very few successes when you have the death of 20 children. Family Liaison Officers were assigned to each of the families so that we could keep them informed, we could keep the media off their doorsteps if that was the case, but keeping them informed, information coming from you to your family liaison officer, right to the family, is huge in this case. They should never learn from the media what happened to their child. Media management, as you probably saw recently in Texas, it didn't get handled very well. You didn't hear about us up there in Connecticut when that Sandy Hook occurred, because we made special efforts on how to handle the media. If you haven't been to one of those courses, I strongly recommend it. They're hard to find today, but they can bury you, as you've seen recently. Post-traumatic stress. If you don't have a program for that, you are going to have so many people who are suffering from post-traumatic stress, and then you're going to say, where do I go? How do I get this taken care of? Where's the therapist, etc.? Have it on your plate now, and hopefully you'll never use it. But we had a huge problem. I felt that in my heart I had 50 people that were a mess, that needed to go for help. They needed a therapist. And I told them, here's the program. It's for nothing. I've been through it. I was the first one to go through it, and I was swearing by it when I left. 3 years later, I finally asked the group, how did my 50 make out? They laughed at me. They said, you mean you're 300? That's how many people stepped up to the plate and said, I need help. That's a huge number compared to what we would envision. So you don't know, you really don't know many times how your people have been affected. Case management, we all have may seen this mistake. The first person that does the news release is the local PD, then the state police or the sheriffs are in, and then the feds are in. All of that should be ironed out ahead of time, because you all have different ways of functioning and you have different steps, and it just makes a mess when you have too many people that are trying to take over what's going on. Those things should be resolved long before you go there or you ever have a case like this. Gun control, big issue right after Sandy Hook. Everybody wanted a change in gun control. They wanted to make it harder to buy guns. They wanted to change the laws. All of that stuff started rolling. And what happened to us? In Connecticut, the state police run the special licensing section, meaning they issue the pistol permits, etc. You came to work, it looked like you were in Disney World. The line outside our doors for pistol permits and permission to buy new guns was incredible. People do not want that taken away from them. And again, we didn't see that coming. And it was just like Disney World. There were so many people lined up who had been putting it off, and now all of a sudden they wanted to buy. Okay. This is a policy change that they'll throw at you, and you're going to hear it because everybody wants to respond to the politicians. Nobody will offer you a dime to do it. So think about that. You can say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to try to do that. You can't do anything without money. So we were in the hole to begin with. Gun safety, I'm going to leave that alone. You've already got all your people, your best people there, and guess who's coming to visit the next day? President, Vice President will be there, Attorney General will be there, all of which you have to provide extreme public safety and private protection to them. If you don't have that extra 100 people sitting around somewhere that can handle that for you, you should know ahead of time that we need to have regional plans, not just PD plans, county plans, etc. The dignitaries kept coming because this was such a terrible event. Okay, that next week, I don't think anybody that I've seen yet in doing these presentations was ready for 28 funerals. They will shut a city down, they'll shut a county down. How many funeral homes do you think we had in our town? 1. So it made all the families have to compete for space, and it just was very unpleasant. Be prepared for 9 years, in my case, of being FOI'd to court for the media. They're still after every detail. They want every gory detail, and they're going to print it, and you're going to say no, no, no. And then it'll drag it out for 9 years. I've just finished doing that. Not what I would call a very pleasant thing to do. I've talked about all these things, and we implement them all that week, and guess what we had the funding to do for those programs? 0. Went to Washington, basically said, will you pay for this? We got a good answer, I'll just leave it at that. Okay, in the middle of this, you would think you've had enough. You think your people, you can see them folding. We got a call from the Westboro Baptist Church to say they were coming to boycott every one of those funerals. The next phone call coming in came from the Hells Angels. They said, don't worry about Westboro Baptist Church, because they put it in the paper. Westboro Baptist Church put it in the paper they were coming. They said, we'll take care of that group for you. So the Hells Angels were volunteering to take care of Westboro Baptist Church. And they're both telling me we have to protect them. You can't make this up. Okay. Additional 100 people a day you're going to probably need to manage a case like this. The reason being, we stood down the police department and the fire department. They were not able to function appropriately because of what was going through their head. And that's something you should have a plan for before the day comes when you need them. And everybody up here, I'm sure, will agree with me on that. Alex Jones, 10 years, and he's finally getting his day in court. I can't tell you how many times I had to get involved with that. And at one point in time, making a phone call saying, you don't want to come here because it's not my job for people to protect people who are making themselves a huge target. And he listened. I got to give him credit. He listened on that one. So that's my part to start with. I want you to know what we were up against that we weren't prepared for, because there's a lot of things you are prepared for, but there's a lot that you're not.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, Joe's going to go next.
Thank you. Colonel, thank you for sharing that, and Chief, thanks for what you're going to share afterwards. Maria, thank you for having me. Everybody, thank you. Thank you for hanging in there in a long, beautiful day outside, so I appreciate you guys being here. What I hope to do is talk about the possible through New Jersey's example of using people, process, data, and technology to reduce the number of people shot in the state of New Jersey. By reducing that number, we make our communities safer, we build trust and accountability in the communities, and we respect the spirit of bail reform. But first, I met Colonel Stebbins at lunchtime today, and he said, you know, Joe, you look like you're from New Jersey.
Compliment, Joe.
You, Colonel.
Take it as a compliment.
I get that feedback a lot, second only to you sound like you're from New Jersey, even when I'm in New Jersey. So if there's any, if I slip into New Jersey or cop speak, please ask a question and say, hey, Joe, clarify that, or what do you mean by that? But today, there's 280 less people shot in the state of New Jersey. That represents a 28.5% decrease compared to this time last year, and a 2.8% decrease compared to 2019, which was our lowest recorded year for shooting victims since we've been tracking this. So, and I hope to kind of weave in some of the things I've heard today too. In order to, so basically, this wasn't always the case, right? Last year, in June of last year, we were spiking 70% above 2020. So spiking 70% above 2020. 2020 was 39% above 2019. So things were dire in the state of New Jersey. We had to do something. So what changed? So before I describe what was a one-year turnaround, that was 15 years in the making. So 15 years ago, the NJ-ROC, the Fusion Center, created programs to collect shooting incident data and crime gun recovery data in real time. And in 2012, the New Jersey State Police and the Fusion Center created a ballistic community of interest between and among the 6 ballistic labs to standardize and share NIBIN, tip, and lead data. So as a result of that, I can say right now, I can sit here before you as of this morning and say that 704 people have been shot in the state of New Jersey, 130 of them fatally as of this morning. We've recovered 2,888 firearms, 1,792 by arrest. 1 in 10, or 10% of those guns, because we test fire all of them, we know were used in shootings. So 1 in 10 guns recovered is used in a shooting. Because we trace all of our guns, we know that 87% of the guns recovered are from out of state. The guns used in shootings, when we look at their time to crime, the average time to crime is 12 years for a crime gun to get from out of state to the state of New Jersey. When we look at guns used in shootings, it's reduced to 6 years, is cut in half. We have 1,041 NIBIN tips and leads year to date. We know there's 8 guns active in the environment that have at least 2 shooting murders associated to them. Now, these are not all just interesting facts that we know in our understanding of the criminal shooting environment. These are all actionable facts. What changed last year was that we have all of these data sets. What we developed was indexing capability, indexing analytics. We were able to take arrest data, so the names of people arrested every day in the state of New Jersey, and wash them through all of our data sets and get back visual representatives, like icons, of hits in our data sets. And what we found was that there was an average of 220 people being arrested a day. Without fail, statistically, 10 people a day had been involved in shootings. 10 people a day had been involved in shootings. So what we posited was that if we focused limited prosecutorial resources on those individuals, asking for, arguing for detention for the most violent individuals in society and appropriate legal consequences under the current laws. We didn't have to change any laws, and we didn't have to form any task force to send cops out into the field. They were already arresting these individuals. We just didn't know that until we started looking at the data. So what we did was we started to put together this information that we had at the Fusion Center, their propensity for violence, the number of shootings they've been involved in, and we created packages in minutes, and we sent them to local prosecutors to argue for detention. In New Jersey, we have bail reform, but there is a provision there where attorneys can argue for detention based on a threat to public safety. And certainly, we have individuals today we had 15 individuals, so we were above our average. 15 individuals were involved in shootings. 5 of them were involved in 2 or more shootings. 2 were involved in 3 shootings. Has anybody here been involved in 3 shootings? Right? Does anybody here know anybody who's been involved in 3 shootings? All right. Well, except for you, Joe. But the reason you're not raising your hand is because it's not supposed to happen. Right? This is a very, very small cohort of the population that is driving violence. So what have we learned since sending these packages out to the prosecutors? And this was done informally based on relationships we already had with them. We've referred 362 individuals for detention or enhanced prosecution. Those 362 individuals are responsible, cumulative 4,298 arrests. 362 people have been arrested 4,298 times. 1,074 of those were gun arrests. 70% of those individuals remain incarcerated. So that 362, or 0.0004% of the population, is 9 million people in the state of New Jersey. By keeping those individuals incarcerated, we've changed the tide of shootings in the state of New Jersey. We have an Attorney General guideline, a directive now that creates a gun violence reduction task force, but it's not a task force of police officers deploying out into the field. It's leveraging what they're already doing every single day. They're arresting these individuals. So the 4,000 arrests, that's 12.5 arrests per person. That's 3 gun arrests per person. So the cops are doing their job. The task force is actually attorneys from the state attorney's office, who will then liaise with the county, their county counterparts, to ensure accountability that this is happening. Because right now we're doing it informally based on relationships, a ham sandwich, and a cup of coffee. But we want to. As of 2 weeks ago, the attorneys have gotten on the call happens. We do this through a virtual call at 10:30 every weekday, and then we produce that packet. But just tremendous. It's changed, not only changed the number of people shot in the state of New Jersey. We're very, very specific. That's what we want to accomplish. We want to reduce that number. But it's changed the way we look at policing as well. And I can take questions on that as we go forward on what those changes are. But thank you again for your time. Sir?
This one's on. Good afternoon. Just a little background real quick. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 10 years now. Prior to the Sheriff's Office, I was a Deputy Chief with the Orlando Police Department, high-risk incident commander as well. And I'm a member of an International Association of Police Chiefs, National Tactical Officers Association. I go to those conferences, and at those conferences, we hear debriefings on critical incidents like Sandy Hook. And I can tell you, we learn so much by going to those debriefings. I can tell you, Colonel, every issue that you talked about at the Pulse nightclub shooting, we ran into the same things. And going to those debriefings, we learned so much, and we were able to deal with it so much better because of the experience of people like the Colonel that gives us those debriefings on those incidents. And I could talk about those incidents, but again, it was a very similar experience. And but I want to talk about some of the programs that we've initiated, excuse me, and some of the policy changes that have been implemented since incidents like the Pulse nightclub here in Orlando, and also Stoneman Douglas High School, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, and the legislation that came out of that incident. And the first one I want to talk about is school safety. It's changed so much here in Florida since that incident. Prior to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act, we had 91 school resource officers in Orange County. And Orange County Public Schools is the 9th largest school district in the country. And this new legislation, which was mandated without funding, as the Colonel had said, a lot of these things that they implement, required us to put a school resource officer in every school. And that includes all the elementary schools where we divided up 5 amongst an SRO. So we had to go from 91 to 196 school resource officers in a very quick time and not having it funded. And it's a totally different paradigm as well, because the law mandates that you have a school resource officer or guardian in that school from bell to bell every day without fail. I mean, think about it, that paradigm. If you at your workplaces, if somebody took off for vacation or called in sick or went to training like this, you would have to have a body in their seat at their desk. It is hard to do, but it's mandated by law, and we're having to deal with that now. So at our schools, every one of them has an SRO. The staff all have the last session that was here, I was listening. They have the apps that have the panic alarms. All the students have access to those as well. And then when we receive those tips, SROs immediately receive them, and they investigate them. If some of our investigators have to come out, they respond as well. We also developed what's called the STAR protocol, and that's where if these tips are received, they're sent to the SROs and they're documented, so all the SROs know when there are children that are going to their school that have previous encounters, previous incidents where they've made threats. They are aware of that and deal with it. Training has been another major change in law enforcement. I can tell you every deputy at the Orange County Sheriff's Office has been through the active shooter training, and included in that training is if you are the SRO or you are the first deputy on scene and there's an active shooting going in, you're not necessarily going to wait for backup. You are trained to go in there and stop that threat immediately. You're not going to be waiting. Here in Florida, they get that training several times a year. We also train with the fire department, task force rescue, where they come with us into warm zones, not necessarily hot zones, and begin treatment of victims and evacuating them out of the area as well. So the fire department also participates in that. Also, all of our deputies go through CIT training, crisis intervention training, and that, a majority of the incidents that we're dealing with are people who are dealing with mental crisis, And this training is so important. All the SROs have been through it, and now we're working on getting all of our deputies through it as well. Basically being able to handle people going through mental crisis and de-escalation techniques and things like that. Another program that we've integrated into the sheriff's office is a co-responder model where we have deputies who respond with clinicians. At the Orange County Sheriff's Office last year, we received 8,000 calls for service that involved people going through mental crisis. And this team, if it's not hasn't already progressed to violence or they aren't armed, they respond and they make a decision on whether this person, if they can get them services, or whether they need to be Baker acted, whether they need to be arrested, or they also do follow-up with these individuals. And they've handled, so far this year, I think they've handled about 4,000 calls for service involving people with crisis. This unit also does the risk protection orders. That's kind of the red flag laws that you hear about now. Florida has those, where if you have an individual who has made threats to themselves or to others to commit violence and involves a gun, we go to a judge and we get an order to confiscate the firearms from that individual and keep them safekeeping until that person receives treatment and is able to get those firearms back. So that's just a few of the major programs we have in place. I could talk about things like our intelligence unit, our CFIX, our intelligence exchange, our gang unit. A lot of our violent shootings are gang related. Our narcotics unit, we go after the most violent drug dealers, and they are the ones that have most of the guns and do most of the shootings out there that we're dealing with in certain areas of the county as well. So that's just touching on a few of the programs that we put in place, and changes the policies and changes the paradigms that we're dealing with.
First of all, Danny, you made reference to so many of the aspects that your organization, your jurisdiction, your state was not prepared for, and rightfully so. No organization or jurisdiction or state can be prepared for that. But of the I won't say the laundry list, but of the many issues that you made reference to, what are the top 3 areas that you think are most critical for agencies to address? Are they human resource related? Are they financial related? Are they communication related? What would you say to your peer colonel, to your peer law enforcement individual, to even policy individuals that we have here from the feds? What is the most important things that they need to start addressing?
Thank you for that. The first one, I was remiss in not thanking the group that was in here earlier from the 911 side and the PSAPs. They are critically important to our operations. And for an example, the problems we had in Connecticut I didn't mention, but anybody who picked up the landline phones, which is what the secretary did first, that was her job, pick up and dial 911 to tell them we have a shooter. She did exactly that. It went to the 911 center just like it's supposed to do. She had great information to share. However, old school, still with the old plan, she was on a wire line. She had to drop the phone and run for her life because the bullets were coming her way. Nobody can complain about that. But she knew it was one shooter. She knew which way he went, and yet we never got that information because, again, keep your systems current. Anybody from that school who dialed 911 on a cell call went to the state police 5 towns away. They can't dispatch the people in that town. So their information was going somewhere. The only way we could get it back to the local department would be to call them up and forward the call back. So know your systems. I really applaud that prior group that was here because there's a lot of places that need it fixed. We're one of them. There's no reason in the world why we should have 109 PSAPs or ECCs in the state of Connecticut when the state of New Hampshire can do it with 2. And we're a third of their size. So figure out how many people you need to work at 109 PSAPs a day. You're way up there on the numbers, and can then compare it to somebody else. I also have to thank, because it's been a while since obviously we had our event, and there was no FirstNet system in place. FirstNet was created out of the 911 Commission. People couldn't tell the people that were in the towers, police and fire, to get out. They couldn't do it from the scene because the system was shut down. I couldn't tell the people from my position 73 miles driving there with a phone and a radio, I can't talk to the people on the ground to tell them to get into school. So I really applaud the group that was here ahead of us, and I applaud what has happened so far with the FirstNet program that came out of the 911 Commission.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, Joe, talk to us about, obviously, the gun program that you've put in place, with the focus on the data, with the focus on the technology and the communication, and what I know to be the governance or communication structure within the state and within the regions. What would you recommend from an implementation strategy that could be modeled for other states or other jurisdictions? Like you went through 15 years of this. You started with crunching the numbers yourself, all the way to being on the stage reciting stats that everybody is copying diligently. What would be the net areas that you might make some recommendations on?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, don't wait. We have kind of an operational motto at the Rock. We fly the plane as we build it, and we eat the elephant one bite at a time. So we started with just the Excel spreadsheets, and we started in places where we had influence, right? We didn't start off with the entire state. We went to places we had influence, where we had people operating that we can collect information from. Shemendra Paul said years ago, discover what you already have. So essentially, we look at systems that are already in place. We hack what's already there. So if the local police departments have a communication system where they send out to their commands that there's a shooting occurring, we get on that distro. So that's how we started pulling in that data, looking at police departments that had it. Unify the language as well. So when I talk about a shooting victim, we define shootings three ways in the state of New Jersey. A shooting hit is where someone is struck by a projectile fired from a firearm where the intent was not to injure or harm oneself. So it's a criminal act. Suicide, we don't count suicides. We don't count police-involved shootings unless the police officer was shot. Criminal acts. It took a while, but as Maria said earlier, there's 563 police departments in the state of New Jersey, all with their own chiefs, their all CAD, their own RMS, their own way of doing things, their own way of talking, 10 codes, signal codes, plain speak. Aggravated assault, shooting, so we had to standardize the language. So when we did talk, when we had a meeting in North Jersey and we were a meeting in South Jersey, we were all talking apples to apples. So shooting hit, defined shooting murder is the same, except the person dies as a result of the injury, and then shooting no hit. And that's for NIBIN purposes. We track in our database shooting hits and shooting murders, but we had to create a consistent language too, because the NIBIN hits started to come out. And where we have a stop sign or a car shot, nobody's trying to kill a stop sign or a car, they're trying to kill the person who's in the car or under the stop sign. So we're not giving criminals credit for missing. Standardization of language, I think we talked about that earlier today as well. Constantly being on message, too. As Maria indicated, the Core Stat program started 10 years ago. We started with 14 chiefs of police, investigators, analysts, and prosecutors. And the idea was very flat and fast information, communication of trends and patterns, so that those chiefs in the most densely populated area of the United States, where there are jurisdictions, literally, if you're in one street and you step off it, you're in another jurisdiction, they're the victims of the same patterns and crimes from the same perpetrators. We had a feeling that was the case, but when we had the data, we could prove it. So now they have shared problems. Now they could come up with shared solutions. They could respond to it in real time, and then we can evaluate the next month how that went. In between those meetings, we established forums where we had the analysts and the cops speaking together, and that led to us actually creating the real-time crime centers, putting actual nodes of the fusion center in the AORs where they were needed. So we have 3 real-time crime centers broken up regionally, and they're embedded in the police stations with our local partners there. So we're constantly in the field. We're constantly on message. We did not let COVID get in the way either. We leveraged the Homeland Security Information System Adobe Connect program. It's three attractive things about that. It's secure, it's web-based, and it's free. So we started holding all of our meetings on Adobe Connect. The first meeting we had was March 16th. Well, we had regional ones, and if we had 10 people on the call, we were ecstatic. Balloons are coming out of the ceiling, champagne bottles are cracking. But the March 16th, when we started, we messaged out to the police executive community that we were going to start talking about COVID, this pandemic that was occurring. We had 156 on the call, and we went to a 7-day operational, 24-hour operational cycle. The meeting was at 9:15 every morning virtually. By that Sunday, we had the colonel, the attorney general, and 900 single sign-ons participating. So we became relevant. The Fusion Center was not always relevant to all those police departments. We became relevant, and then we started to introduce, as the pandemic waned, we started to introduce crime patterns and trends, and we got police executives involved in the conversation. And again, we maintain those meetings now Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then there's ad hoc ones if the situation presents itself. But being constantly on message helps too, and then reporting the results too. If you're trying to get information from somebody, you have to give back that in some way, shape, or fashion as well. And that's been the motto of the ROIC since day one as well. I hope that answered the question, Maria.
That absolutely did. And Larry, talk to us. You mentioned no less than at least 2 different multidisciplinary programs, and I say 2 because I'm thinking of the ones related to school safety and to the Pulse nightclub. How were they received when you started to go a little bit off of the traditional path, right, as opposed to the pure enforcement? When you started to engage other domains, other social service, started to do more of what we all need to do, how was that received, and to what extent do you have any sort of results to share? And I don't mean necessarily quantitatively, but give us some of the feedback that you might have received from either your peers, the community, et cetera.
Well, I could tell you things like our co-responder model that we're using was definitely well received by the community. There's been a lot of incidents involving violence, mass shootings and things like that, but also incidents involving police use of force. And some of those uses of force have dealt with people going through mental crisis. So us incorporating clinicians into responding to calls for service involving people going through mental crisis has definitely been well received by the community. They think it's the right step, and I believe it is too. It's been a paradigm shift for law enforcement. Initially, like at our agencies, they were all questioning how that was going to work. How are you going to bring a civilian into a dangerous situation like that? And how is that going to work? So there were a lot of questions about how it would work. But once we implemented it and we put those teams out there and we were able to call them when we were dealing with people who were on bridges ready to jump and people who were threatening themselves to commit suicide, we were able to call those teams and they were able to handle it and get those people, not have to arrest them, even have to Baker Act a lot of them, but get them into the services that they needed to get. The agency, the members of the agency saw this is very valuable, and now they're calling them all the time. We need to enlarge that unit. We need to add to it because we can't keep up with the calls for service that we got right now with that unit. So it's been well received. Initially, it was a little difficult at first with the agency, but once they saw how it worked, it's definitely been well received.
And how did you deal with the change management process? Just that difficulty, is that something that you educated them at, that you cajoled them in, that you invited them to the table?
We meet with all the deputies. All the deputies go through training every year. It's called block training. And the sheriff and I and the undersheriff meet with every deputy on the agency at these training sessions. And we explain to them we let them know ahead of time what is coming and why we're doing it and the benefit, and let them ask questions and let them get buy-in, and think that has helped a lot. To hear it straight from the sheriff, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it, and that's how we got through it. Wonderful.
Now I'm going to ask each of our panelists to give us some I won't say parting thoughts, but summary thoughts on what would be some of the areas that they would like their peers, our agencies, our service providers, our community to understand. Before I do that, do we have any questions?
I wanted to wait a minute because my voice doesn't carry. So given the experiences that you've had, and this may actually bleed into a little bit of what Maria's looking for from you, I'm curious to hear what you think an organization such as IGES or industry in general can do to help you going forward and to make things easier should you encounter another situation like this. Obviously, they're never easy, but what can be done from a technology perspective to help going forward?
Sure. Thank you for the question. Data and technology are what gives us visibility and the ability to look at a situation in real time and create solutions to that. I mean, if IBM was running the police, right, they would have figured this out a long time ago, right? So we need state-of-the-art technology. We need to know what's out there. We need consistent briefings on what's possible, what are the best practices in the private sector. We have the data. We figured out how to collect it. We just need ways to make sense of it is what I would say would help greatly. Yeah. Does that answer it, ma'am?
Perspectives, Larry or Danny?
I guess one of the things that I think we could use some help on, because it was new to us, is the family liaison officers that we put with the families. A lot of them came back feeling the loss that those families felt, and they felt as if they needed assistance, and we didn't have that in place right away. And if I was going to, be able to turn the clock back, I would put it back to a point where we were before that incident, and then we're looking for the training, so we would have people trained to be able to handle a family like that when they're going through such stressors. And after the fact, I was able to find the only place, I couldn't find anybody in the United States that was using family liaison officers. It came from England because of issues that they've had in the past, and they have a training program for it. And I think it's one of those things that we can always add that tool to our belt, because you never know. You just never know. And it would have helped us. It would have helped us manage our people, too, because you can't leave them in that too long. They got real tight with the families. They're still very friendly with the families, but they were damaged. No question about it as far as the stress that went along with it. So I would say that we take care of our own, because at some point in time, you may have to. And if you're not ready, again, you're going to have to go looking for it.
Thank you. Larry?
I think my main takeaway is just the importance of the training, and not just training for your agency, but training for the region. Because at these incidents, you have so many different agencies responding. And unfortunately, we're seeing in some of the most recent incidents where those folks didn't have the same training. They didn't establish incident command. Nobody took charge. It hurt them. And so it's so important. We have great cooperation amongst all the agencies here in Central Florida. We all train together, and we make sure that we're training so that we're all on the same page. So it's just a matter of not if, it's a matter of when the next incident is going to happen, that we all understand when we get there what we're going to do. Incident command is going to be established, and we are going to go in right away and take care of that problem. So I think training is just so important, but not with just your agency, but with the region.
Wonderful. So without any other questions, I'm just going to give each of the panelists an opportunity to close up their thoughts and address any, I was going to say hanging chad. Somehow that expression came to mind. You made reference to the money, the funding story. So give us a couple of closing remarks from each of you, and I'd appreciate that. I feel like I had a Florida moment for a second.
Regarding the money, I'll just tell you the story. The Attorney General of the United States was sitting at a conference table with us, and he wanted a complete briefing, photos and everything else on what happened at Sandy Hook. And at the very end of it, he turned to me and he said, "Is there anything we can do for you?" And I said, "Yes. Pay for it." It took us about 3 months to put together a whole package from all the agencies that were participating, the overtime, everything that went into it. We sent it to Washington from me to him, and I got a card back about 3 weeks later with a check for the whole thing. There's help out there when you need it, especially for our kids.
And I can tell you, finance related, a grants manager, a grants coordinator are worth their weight in gold. Not only recouping the expenses of, for instance, our hurricane response, critical incidents response, we have such a great grant writing team, and that they have put together all the paperwork, and we've gotten reimbursed for just about everything related to the major incidents that we've had here in Florida. And but also using that grant writer to help get the types of things, the technology, the tools that you need, using federal grants, state grants, knowing what you need, but having that grant writer find those grants for you and go out and get them so that you can get the tools, the equipment, and the training that you need to deal with these incidents. Have a question?
Regarding the grant writers, so I don't see enough sharing of grant applications to other agencies. Is that something that you could welcome, that even if I just took and had a repository of grants, that we could maybe put them in some type of repository with other folks can actually look at how these are typically not competing grants, right, for different agencies. So is that information shareable? Is it something you would consider? And maybe not just to you, but to everyone in the room. Are there any grants that you might want to store into an IGIS repository so others can use it as a template?
Well, I know that there are some grants like the UASI grants, the federal UASI grants, where those are open to all law enforcement, all fire departments within the region, and those requests are sent to the UASI coordinators, and they're put before a committee. And I know that all the agencies within Central Florida receive grants or money from the UASI grants. So I know there are grants that are out there for everybody as well. I think you were going to add to that.
Sure. Thank you, Chief. I'm the only thing standing between you and the bar, and I'm thirsty, so this is going to be quick. Every technology to read data, technology to overcome interoperability, training all require money. Certainly, the ROC lives and dies on UASI money and grants. So certainly, and we write grants on behalf of regions. So certainly, that idea would be welcome. Yes, sir.
Wonderful. Okay, so policy, governance, communication, training, the operational drivers, the evaluation or the assessment in order to collect the lessons learned and be able to refine it, reuse it, and benefit other jurisdictions. The IGIS community cannot say enough of all of those components. In each of your presentations, that's exactly what you made reference to, different language, different experiences. There were 3 disparate experiences from this panelist, and yet those baselines, those common denominators were in fact very loud and very clear in their messages. I thank you each and every one individually. I look forward to the conversations with the refreshment in hand. And I urge you to spend time with our panelists, not only this panel, but those that we've had today and those that we will have tomorrow, because they're extraordinary individuals that bring extreme value to our community and the betterment of the operational response. So I thank you very much.